What's up, fellow bookworms, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dylan, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing my top 10 audiobooks of all time. Now, are these the best audiobooks ever? Probably not, but these are the top 10 that I have personally listened to and really enjoyed. So there's going to be two criteria for the books that are on this list. Number one is just going to be, how did I enjoy the story itself? How good was the book? Obviously, there's only going to be good books on this list, in my opinion. And then the second criteria, the one unique to this particular list, is how well done was the audiobook? So how well did the narrator do, or narrators? Did it seem believable? Did the voices fit the characters? All that fun stuff. So let's get right into it with book number one on this list, which is actually a book that I'm currently reading right now. So I'm a bit hesitant to add it to the list because I haven't finished it and it could end up being a huge flop. But that book is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and it's also narrated by the author as well, which I actually really enjoyed. When I saw that it was narrated by the author, I was a little skeptical because, authors write. They come up with stories. They aren't necessarily professional voice actors. But I think Neil Gaiman has done exceptionally well with this audiobook. Book two on this list is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Now this is unique because Travis Baldree, to my knowledge, started out as an audiobook narrator. That was kind of his introduction to the publishing world. And then I guess at some point after he had read dozens, if not hundreds of other people's books, he decided, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot and write my own book. And I have to say, Legends and Lattes was one of the best books that I read in 2022. It's very unique. So it is a fantasy, but only like in a way. So really quick, the story itself is about a orc. I almost said a girl, but I guess it's an orc who opens up a coffee shop and is just like living in this fantastical world. And we just kind of watch her go through all the day-to-day difficulties of opening up and maintaining a coffee shop. It was really fun. It's the definition of cute and cozy fantasy, really probably the pioneer of that genre. But in addition to being a really cute and cozy story, of course, Travis Baldree did an amazing job narrating his own story, and I really enjoyed it a lot. Third on the list is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, not narrated by the author. This one was narrated by Stephen Pacey, and I really enjoyed both the story and maybe even more so the narration of this book. So in The Blade Itself, there's several, I guess, main characters, but one of those main characters is someone named Glokta, which is kind of an interesting name. But this particular character, it says, has kind of a speech impediment. He has kind of a lispy type voice. And throughout the narration of the book, Stephen Pacey does a fantastic job of voicing this character. It was by far the most memorable part of the entire book for me. Now again, the story itself was very good. I've been wanting to finish out this trilogy for a long time. I just haven't. But the story was great, but I think the strength of this book really was the narration, at least for me. So if you like fantasy, this one is kind of, it's considered grimdark, I think, is the official name. It's kind of harsh sometimes, but it's good, bloody, epic fantasy if you're into that sort of thing. Number 4, shifting gears entirely, is Alexander Hamilton, which was narrated by one of my all-time favorite narrators in Scott Brick. So the book itself was fascinating. It's obviously a biography of Alexander Hamilton, who was just an amazingly fascinating, interesting character in American history. But Scott Brick is just, he has the voice for me. I truly enjoy his narration. So that combined with a very rich, interesting biography of a really interesting person was just trifecta for me. Really enjoyed it. And then number 5, I've got another Scott Brick. We'll just get them right in order. And it was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, which is a classic. It really pioneered the genre of true crime. That book almost was enough to give me nightmares, It was one of those books where it's brutal, It's like bone chilling. And then you think about it and you realize that it was real. It actually happened to some poor family. Without giving too much away, there's a family out in Kansas, and they end up being murdered by these two thugs for essentially, apparently, no real reason. But we are exploring the case. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. Truman Capote obviously is one of those legendary writers that most people are familiar with. But the great true crime story mixed with that golden voice that Scott Brick has, it was just creepy, very well done. His voice in that narration was very like old-timey reportery. It felt like I was living in the 1940s listening to some old-timey detective talk for however long that book was. I really enjoyed it. Number 6 is actually going to be a twofer because they are so similar. They're going to be The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, both, of course, written by Mark Twain. Now, is this book socially acceptable today? I don't know. Yes and no. Obviously, Mark Twain lived a couple hundred years ago where things were just different. It wouldn't fly today, of course, and there were times listening to this story where I felt kind of uncomfortable, but it's a classic in literature, and if you can look beyond that, they're just really great books. Now, we've got two different narrators here. I think they were both pretty equal. The first one who narrated The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was Elijah Wood, who, of course, played Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, and I thought he did a really good job. His southern accent was comical but enjoyable. I thought it was pretty good. And then the narrator of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was, of course, Ron Swanson himself, aka Nick Offerman. I'll always think of him as Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation, but I thought Nick Offerman did just a great job, right up there with Elijah Wood in narrating this classic book. Now, number 7 is Educated by Tara Westover, and this is one where it's kind of the opposite of The Blade itself. I didn't really love the narrator as much. She kind of had that like cold, matter-of-fact voice that did the job well, but it kind of just was easy to zone out after a while. That's just me. But I thought the story itself was incredible, and it's a book that I think everyone should listen to at least once. Obviously, you could probably guess based on the title. It's about someone who aspires to become educated. A lot more to it than that, trust me. The main character has probably the most interesting life that I have ever heard of a person having. But it was a remarkable story about someone's struggles and just a very unique upbringing, to say the least, and their desire and journey to achieve higher education, enlightenment, whatever you want to say there. Again, narrator was okay, not bad, but not amazing, but the story itself was truly amazing. It's nonfiction, of course. I assume that was clear, but it is nonfiction. Number 8 on the list is Dune, and there are probably several versions of Dune over the years that have been made, but the one that I listened to and really enjoyed was one that had a huge cast of characters. I do think Scott Brick was one of them, if I remember correctly, but there are a lot of characters in Dune, and each character had their own narrator in this rendition of the story. So not only is Dune an amazing pillar of science fiction that, yes, is a little complicated at times, but yes, is also very worth it. Having a really large cast of like well-known actors and voice actors really put this book over the top for me. So I know, Dune kind of gets a bad rap for being the classic, like, complicated science fiction. Yes, it can be that sometimes, but it is a classic for a reason, in my opinion. And this really well done audiobook makes it easy to really just get yourself immersed in the story. Now, of course, no list of the best audiobooks ever would be complete without mentioning at least one Harry Potter book. There are a lot of different versions. Everyone seems to have their favorite. I'll be the first to admit, I haven't listened to all the other versions. So could there be a better version out there? Very possibly so. But I listened to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by, of course, J.K. Rowling, or Rowling, however you want to say her name. The version I listened to was narrated by Jim Dale, who I had never heard of before. I assume he's done other books, but I really enjoyed that version a lot. To me, it just felt like, your classic British guy reading a British story. It just worked. It was just pretty well done. I thought his voices for the different characters were pretty good. And it was just very easy to get immersed in the story. Now, does it help that the book is probably the greatest best-selling fiction book ever? Yeah, probably so. But I really enjoyed this version of the book. And then, book number 10, and I honestly can't believe that we went through all those that fast, is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Now, I don't want to be dramatic, but this book was honestly probably the best science fiction book I have read to date. Is it kind of cheesy at times? For sure. Is it very believable? I don't know. Not really. But I feel like all good science fiction kind of fits into that category. If your science fiction isn't at least a little cheesy, what are we doing? Is it even science fiction? I thought it was just really good. It honestly made me cry, or at least almost cry, which science fiction doesn't usually do that. So it was just a really great story. And it wasn't so much that the narrator did an amazing job. I think they did a great job. But it was that, I can't really say a whole lot without spoiling the book, but other characters who have unique voices were voiced really well and interestingly, and it was a whole experience for sure listening to that book. I also read it as well. I kind of alternated, but I really did love the audio version. If you want to check out any of these books, the links are going to be in the description below so you can get all the details and all the information about them if you're interested. But I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below. What is the best audiobook that you have ever listened to? Or do you just have one particular narrator that you really, really enjoy? I would absolutely love to hear it in the comments below. I'm always looking for good recommendations, physical books or audiobooks. Doesn't really matter to me. Look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.